walk through time while you meander through the great medieval manor house that time has forgotten. There is still no electricity, and they still rely on candles and gas for lighting to this day. The first family to live at the house were the Cotilles, and in 1353 Hilara Cotil married William Edgecombe and brought the union of her land at Cotil into the Edgecombe estate. You enter the building via the Great Hall, and you immediately walk into an impressive display of arms, set amongst a collection of period furniture beneath a high arched timber roof. Most of the original furnishings and tapestries remain at the house, and each room has its own fine examples. Between 1490 and 1520, Sir Richard and his son Piers rebuilt the manor house. The original house was a quadrangular building of red sandstone, which still forms the lowest levels of the walls surrounding the inner courtyard. The family moved from Cotil to Mount Edgecombe, some 10 miles to the south, in 1553. Cotil was only occasionally occupied after that. For 6 centuries the Edgecombes owned the manor house, until 1947, when it was accepted by the Treasury in payment of death duty and was then given to the National Trust for safekeeping. The town consists of East and West Looe, which is separated by the river and connected by a road bridge. Looe remains a fishing town, with its fleet of small boats returning their catch daily to the harbour. Looe's main business is tourism, and the town has many pubs and restaurants to accommodate the influx of visitors to the town in the summer months. Lanhedrick is essentially a Victorian house that has evolved from much earlier beginnings. The name Lanhedrick comes from St Hedrick, believed to be an Irish missionary to Cornwall. After a number of owners, it was purchased by Sir Richard Robart in 1620. Sir Richard and his son John completed the construction of a new house on the site. It was a traditional 4-sided house around a central courtyard. In 1780, the east wing was demolished. This gave the present U-shaped plan to the house, as it looks now. However, it gradually lapsed into a state of disrepair and was unoccupied and almost devoid of furniture for a long time. In the 19th century, the first Baron Robarts of Lanhedrick decided to make this his home and commissioned George Gilbert Scott to modernise and remodel the manor house. This Victorian architect attempted to reinstate Lanhedrick as a comfortable Victorian country house. In 1881, only 20 years after the restoration work was completed, the south and west wings were destroyed by fire. The house was then rebuilt by the Baron's son, Thomas. This gave the neo-Jacobean facade with a traditional Victorian arrangement of rooms. And there was a staff of around 40 to run the house smoothly. Immediately behind the house is the 15th century church of St Hedrick, where many of the Robarts family lie buried. St Michael's Mount may have been the site of a monastery as early as the 8th century. In the 11th century, Edward the Confessor gave it to the Norman Abbey of Mount St Michael in France. It was a priory to that abbey until the dissolution of the alien houses as a side effect of the war in France by Henry V in 1424. The St Aubin family have owned the mount since 1640. In 1954, the family gave it to the National Trust, but retained a 999-year lease to inhabit the castle. Polperro is a 13th century fishing village, originally belonging to the ancient Raphael manor mentioned in the Domesday Book. Fishing has been the principal occupation of its inhabitants for centuries, and pilchards were often caught in abundance to be sold far and wide. When Britain was at war with its neighbours in the 18th century, a duty on many goods was increased considerably, encouraging the Polperro fishermen to smuggle goods such as tea and gin, brandy and tobacco in from Guernsey. The man who arrived in Polperro to manage the smuggling trade was a man called Job. He changed the life of the village, for he was to become the greatest single benefactor in its long history. Over the years, Job acted as advisor, accountant and banker to many of the inhabitants, as well as the local gentry. Foy is known as the China clay port, as it exports 750,000 tons of clay per year. Yet it has a relaxing feeling when you meander through the winding streets or sitting outside a restaurant having a cream tea. La Ronde is an 18th century 16-sided house located near Lympstone, Devon. The Parminter family, which can be traced back to the 1600s, had acquired considerable wealth as wine merchants. John Parminter died in 1784, leaving a great wealth to his daughter Jane. Jane decided to embark on a grand tour of Europe, accompanied by her invalid sister Elizabeth, her cousin Mary and a female friend. By the time they returned in 1795, Jane and Mary had become very close and decided to set up home together in Devon. They purchased 15 acres of land near Exmouth. The house was completed in about 1796 and its design is supposedly based on an Italian basilica. Once their house had been built, they lived secluded and somewhat eccentric lives for many years, until 1811, when Miss Jane died. The house consisted of 20 rooms, the rooms on the ground floor radiating out from a circular hall. The idea of the house was, as the sun moved around the house, the cousins would move from room to room and follow its path. The house also contained many of the objects, especially shells, which the cousins brought back from their European tour. Much of the internal decoration was produced by the cousins, whose handcrafted skills were excellent.